We've made some changes to this podcast to get you to the story faster. You'll be listening to The Reef in less than 60 seconds. This episode of The Reef is brought to you by the GoDaddy coupon code CJCSIG99C. That's CJCSIG99C, which gets you a brand new .com domain for just 99 cents. Learn more and find other great GoDaddy coupons at scottsigler.com/GoDaddy. Welcome to the serialized audiobook, The Reef. Written by Scott Sigler and Matt Wallace. Narrated by Scott Sigler. The Reef is also available as an ebook and is a full-length audiobook. If you want the whole story with no waiting, go to scottsigler.com/The Reef for links to Amazon, Audible, Barnes & Noble, and more. Hello, junkies! Welcome to episode number 2 of The Reef, a GFL novella. After the episode, I will tell you about a brand new audiobook release that is not The Reef. Yes, we have lots of story for your faces. And I will get you up to date on our pre-order issues for The Gangster. For now, let's get you caught up on the story, and then we're going to go ground and pound. Previously on The Reef. Chiyal, the heretic north, has hit rock bottom. Or has he? On the run from crime lord Gredok the Splithead, Kai has taken on a fake name, Lash Kari, and fled to the Reef, a planetoid on the frontier of the known galaxy. With no job and few rules, his drinking and fighting carry him from one place to the next, but he's about to discover that he can't punch his way out of everything. Chapter 3. The Meat Market. By the time Chiyal reached the center of town, the slab was in full swing. He stalked past purple-black slate buildings and modular structures into the large open tent that made up the center of Break My Back. Human voices, alien voices, the static voices of translator boxes, all haggling and hollering, perpetually poised between argument and banter. Some voices barked and hawked, others answered and heckled. The familiar symphony of Reef commerce. The slab looked more like a carnival than a town center. Small stages, colorful booths, barkers and pitch beings of all species were out in force. Everywhere you looked, someone or something was trying to capture your attention. The slab wasn't a sideshow, however. At least if it was a sideshow as a means to an end. In truth, it was a bustling flesh bazaar where the wares for sale were all alive and kicking. The slab was where you came to hire muscle for every purpose. Bouncers for your bar. Security for your business. Bodyguards for your person. Escorts for caravans traveling between reef towns and settlements. Crime czars of the Reef came here to recruit or to sign short-term help. Was it legal? No. Selling sentient beings was never legal. Was it tolerated? Considering that BAT and other law enforcement types made purchases there from time to time, yes. Chiyal came here when he was broke, which he often was. He took whatever job he could find. He worked until he had enough money to drink. He drank until the money ran out, at which time he waited for someone to pick a fight with him. If that didn't happen, then he picked a fight with someone. Then, after a long night in the tank under Bat's watchful eye, the whole cycle started anew. That had become his life. As he entered the big tent, heads turned. Eyes of varying numbers locked on him. He had developed quite the reputation during his time on the Reef and in Break My Back, and not just as a bar brawler, disturber of the peace, and menace to drunk tanks everywhere. Having a reputation was nothing new to Chiyal. The heretic's reputation had made him beloved, even worshipped, by sentient beings across the galaxy. Lash Kari's reputation, on the other hand, made beings turn and walk the other way. Lash was known as a violent troublemaker who caused far more headaches for an employer than his significant skills as a warrior were worth. Kai didn't like beings reacting to him like that. He didn't like being shunned. But he had no illusions. He had the reputation he now deserved. From the champion of the galaxy to violent pariah. Who could have known it would end up like this? Maybe anyone with a brain. Maybe. He tried to make eye contact with Lebelius Zank, who had hired him twice before. Lebelius chose to look the other way. He nodded at Sandra burn victim Jandral. She held his eyes for a moment, then shook her head and returned to the customers standing outside her small tent. Zank and Jandral were scum, pure and simple. They would do anything to anyone if the price was right. Maybe this time he'd find work and not drink the pay. Maybe. Chiyal stalked past a colossal key warrior missing an entire pair of arms. In their place were two mounds decorated with cauterized burn scars. The key was obviously intent on showing potential clients he only needed the remaining two appendages. He had set up hulking pieces of sheet metal in a stone vise and was impressing the passers-by by compressing his tubular body, the act known as a gather, then expanding to full length in an instant and ramming his bulbous head through the sheet metal. A few yards on, the Proporstics, a pair of heavy G siblings, stood on a makeshift stage. Dozens of prospective clients looked on as the two performed feats of strength. Shevchenka, the sister, was tossing up massive 500-pound barrels one after the other. Her brother, Fedor, caught each one and juggled them between two skillet-sized hands. Chiyal knew them both. They were reliable brutes and decent guards. Their manager was a shifty gray-furred Quith leader named Turbik the Negotiator. Turbik had once controlled a sizable organization, or so the story went, but he'd been disgraced. Or betrayed. As with most things on the Reef, the truth depended on who was telling the story. Chiyal paused beyond the gathering of rubes and crooks to watch Shevchenka lob a ceramic barrel into the air for her brother to smash in half with one swing of his massive arm. Turbik had filled the barrel with a half-dozen floating, fist-sized creatures, purple pepperdeers, that scattered in a cloud when Fedor shattered the barrel. The onlookers applauded. Chiyal shook his head with a wry grin, impressed that Turbik had found a way to make the Proporstics stand out from the crowd of available thugs. Nasty way to do it, though. Pepperdeers were stinky gas bags that shit everywhere. They ate grails, which ate drillers, which ate shimmerscale. But at least Turbik hadn't opted for spike beaks. Those dive-bombing bastards ate pepperdeers, but were so stupid they'd jam their thin, sharp beaks into anything that moved, whether it was native reef life or not. Given a choice, Chiyal would rather clean shit out of his hair than pull a broken, serrated beak out of his flesh. He walked on, toward the pillar. The pillar stood in the slab center, close to the main pole that held up the big tent's apex. The pillar was a 3-meter-high, 1-diameter holotank that had long ago stopped displaying holos. Sentients taped, stuck, plastered, even nailed notices of every size, color, and material onto the pillar. The written languages on them were as varied as the citizens of the Reef, although most of the notices were translated into human English, the intergalactic language of business. There were help-wanted notices for all kinds of illegal activity, right out in the open. Smuggling, drug running, protection rackets. Anything where one sentient could make money by forcibly removing it from another. Kai wasn't down for any of that, but the pillar also had postings for legit jobs, including bouncing at taverns or escorting caverns across the Reef. He'd done both of those gigs during his 2 years here, several times for several employers. He had to admit that none of his bosses would have given him a satisfactory or above on any performance review. Maybe he would stop drinking. As he approached the pillar, a waist-high red and black-furred Quith worker stepped in to block his way. Chiyal almost walked on the creature before realizing the sentient was even there. Chiyal stopped, looked down into the single, fist-sized eye of Sheka the surprisingly eloquent. Bigger than a leader, much smaller than a warrior, workers were the caste that did all of that species' manual labor. Sheka was one of several beings who organized and oversaw the slab. His gig was managing the pillar, connecting employers with potential employees, running messages, and performing any other menial task that needed doing. Considering a 10% cut of anything anyone paid or made out of the slab went to the house, managing the pillar was far from the Reef's worst job. "Do not bother, Mr. Kari," Sheka said, his voice far tougher than he actually was. "There is no reasonable client here who will take you into their employ after the last incident." At first, Chiyal couldn't remember which incident the notoriously tight-ass Quith was referring to. "This is still a free territory, isn't it?" "Free is a relative term," Sheka said, "and whatever restrictions under which you find yourself operating have only been imposed by yourself." "Don't get existential with me, you furry little bastard." "I am being quite literal," Sheka said. Chiyal tried to remember which gig could have gone so badly that he was banned even from the crap jobs offered on the pillar. Nothing came to mind. "What did I do that I haven't done before?" "Sven Lawson reports that while riding guard for his caravan, you were found after a prolonged bout of inebriation, lying wounded and completely nude, save for your oxygen mask, in the proximity of 2 dead spider bears." Dead spider bears. Great. Just great. "So I survived a spider bear attack," Kai said. "That's a good thing." "These spider bears were defanged and highly trained. They were domesticated, Mr. Kari, and on their way to the circus in the town of Kick My Nuts." Kick My Nuts at a circus? "If they were so domesticated, why did they attack me?" "Because you antagonized them. You threw slate at them until they charged you, and you proceeded to snap their necks." Snapping spider bear necks? Even as drunk as could be, that seemed like something he would remember. Oh yes, a vague image. Him screaming he could defeat 2 monsters buck naked with his bare hands. "An accident," Kai said. "I tripped." Sheka's clear cornea swirled with curls of red and violet, a color combination that revealed his annoyance. "The caravan was paid to deliver live spider bears," the worker said. "No live spider bears meant no delivery, which meant Mr. Lawson lost his investment." "Oh, come on, Sheka. Shit happens. I need a job. Help me out." The red-violet swirled faster. "This may be a shock to you, Mr. Kari, but beings like you are easily replaceable on the reef. Trained spider bears are not. You should have remanded yourself to maiming and killing your own kind if you wish to continue finding employment." A little bit more of the memory came back. The ever-present deathly cold of the reef, which he had laughed at. The sound of those huge necks snapping. "Wait a minute," Kai said. "You're telling me that I'm blackballed?" "In this market and in this town, yes." Chiyal didn't say anything. The last time a sentient being had spoken to him with such abandon, such presumption, such utter disregard for either status or stature, it had also been a small quiff. That one had been a leader. More than that, the head of a major crime syndicate. Kai had wanted to rip the eye out of that furry cyclops head. He wanted to do the same now. Kai became aware that the slab had fallen quiet. Everyone was watching him and Sheka. Chiyal North, and by extension Lash Kari, was many things, most of them wholly unpleasant, bordering on downright despicable. But he was no bully. He didn't pick on beings that couldn't defend themselves. "I'll apologize to Lawson," Kai said. "I really need a gig. I'll stay sober this time. I promise." Maybe he'd stay sober. Maybe. "That is what you promised me last time, Mr. Kari. The Quith have a saying. Anyone can fall for the first lie, but only the stupid fall for the second. I'm not stupid." Sheka stood his ground. The slab silence weighed Kai down, the lack of noise far more powerful than the screams of thousands who had once rooted him on. Go home, Sheka said, so softly only Kai could hear. I will see if I can find you something not posted here. Build your credibility back up. The worker's eyes swirled with traces of a color Kai had rarely seen in the Quyth, barely even heard of. Peach. The color of pity. Somewhere in the back of his head, Marcus Diablo told Kai to leave, to take the offer, to do whatever gig, washing dishes, shoveling shit, removing roadkill, anything that could help Kai get back to a job with at least a shred of respect. Knowing what needed to be done and doing it were two different things. Right now, Kai needed to hit something. He wouldn't hit Sheka. But there were others. Chiyal's bare, muck-covered feet carried him to the far end of the slab, out of the entrance there and onto the unpaved street. He was angry at Sheka, but absolutely furious with himself. He knew drinking on a job was a mistake, and drinking as much as he had on that caravan was sheer idiocy. The spider bears hadn't done anything to deserve death. They stank, they growled, and that had pissed him off. Once Kai had gotten good and liquored up, his anger at his situation, at his hopeless reality, at all he'd lost, the part of him that didn't know how to exist as anything but a fighter had taken over. The spider bears happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. That same anger and hopelessness now flared, flashed, consumed him. But there weren't any handy spider bears. And that was okay, because his feet seemed to act on their own accord, walking him to the hole. The hole was another staple of Break My Back. A shallow pit, mostly cleared of slate shards and filled with packed dirt that slightly softened the inevitable impacts. In the pit, 2 or more freelancers would take each other on, fighting in no-holds-barred matches to a fall. It allowed them to display their hand-to-hand abilities, showboat for the rubes, and earn a little extra scratch in the process. Chiyal shoved his way past the crowd circling the pit, pushing bodies aside as if they were nothing more than blades of tall grass. A few men took umbrage, turned to do something about it. Then they saw who had done the pushing, and they meekly moved away. Kai had to go around one of those horribly built mechs so common in Break My Back. It was too big to push that aside. That Toulouse guy built them in a shop at the edge of town. This one was neon yellow, 3 meters tall, and when Kai went around it, he saw why it was taking up valuable spectator space. Its torso was a tank of green liquid with a Lee key inside. Kai peeled off his stained, rancid tunic and cast it aside. His frustration with the situation in which he found himself, along with the rage he felt at Sheka's offer, swirled into one acidic ball burning a hole through his core. In the pit, 2 humans armed with shields and makeshift batons were battling a Sklorno female. Both of the humans were well over 2 meters tall. The thick-set Sklorno still towered above them, even without her back-folded legs fully extended. Her 4 eye stalks twitched independent of each other, looking at both opponents, the space between them, at the crowd to make sure no one blindsided her. Chiyal didn't recognize her. Had he been in a better mood, he would have respected her awareness, the mark of a street fighter who has been on the losing end of a bum rush brawl. He wasn't in a good mood. And if he didn't have respect for himself, he sure as hell didn't have it for anyone else. Chiyal stepped down into the hole's dirt slope. High side, one of the sentients that took bets and ran side action at the hole, a wiry-haired weasel of a human just a smidge taller than Sheka, was the first to spot Kai's intrusion. "Oh no, Lash, not a chance!" he yelled, waving fistfuls of currency and a box of betting chits. "Valenti said your ban was for life. We're trying to work up decent action here." Kai ignored him, striding deeper into the pit. Behind him, the tenor of the crowd immediately changed. Most of the eyes shifted to him. Many knew who Lash was. Others just saw an enraged human giant whose every tensed muscle spelled out destructive intent. Voices began to rise. The action began to shift. I got an ounce of Jinkata stone. Give me it all on Lash. I'll put my whole stake on Kari. Even money on the big guy. No bet, Kai heard Highside shouting back at them angrily. No bet! The crowd roared collectively in protest. One of the human combatants spotted him. The man turned his attention from the tooth-and-nail battle with the Sklorno and moved toward Chiyal, shield held firmly in front of him, baton at the ready. Barely breaking stride, Kai launched a front kick into the shield's center. The man behind it flew up and into the crowd, toppling a half-dozen spectators. The man didn't rise. Either he was knocked out, or he was smart enough to pretend that he was. The second human abandoned his melee with the Sklorno and charged this new threat. Shield out front, baton raised to strike. Chiyal timed the rush. Just as the man started to swing the baton down, Kai stepped forward and threw a tombstone-stiff jab over the top of the shield. So fast the man probably didn't even see the punch coming. Fist meet nose. Cartilage scrunched, blood sprayed. The blow snapped the man's head backward. The man swayed. He wasn't as smart as his partner. He should have gone down. Kyle pushed hard off one bare foot and leapt into the air. His foot collided with the man's jaw like a rogue asteroid, obliterating it. The man landed in a heap of tangled appendages on the muddy ground. The adrenaline, the rush. Every cell of Kyle's body and brain rode that wave. The years of intense training, first with his father and then with legendary human contender Marcus Diablo, never really faded away. Marcus had drilled target awareness into Chiyal until awareness transcended skill, became a form of intuition. Chiyal was barely aware of the Sklorno leaving her feet before he saw it, before he heard it. A split second later, he sensed her descending above him. He had plenty of time to dive from her path. Unfortunately, his heightened awareness was hardwired to blinding, technology-augmented speed, and he no longer had that technology. Kyle's high and beautiful wave crashed upon the rocks. Yes, he had worked hard to rebuild himself. Yes, he was still stronger and meaner and better trained than most humans he'd ever come across. But he was still human. A human without the mods that made him a blur of motion. What would have been an effortless dodge during his octagon days didn't come close to getting him clear. The Sklorno crushed Kai to the ground. The soft dirt was his only saving grace, and if not for that and knowing how to disperse his weight at the last second, his back would have snapped in half. The first non-human Chiyal had ever fought in the octagon was a Sklorno. She had leapt on him from what at the time seemed like 30 meters in the air, broken both of his legs, cracked his skull like a porcelain rice bowl dropped on cement. It was, and remained, the second worst beating he'd ever received. The fight game was an economy built upon respect, and the currency of that respect was pain. That beating, and the bouts against other Sklorno that had followed, meant Chiyal held that race, if not in high esteem, then certainly in a special brand of honor. All of that hovered in a small mental cloud somewhere in the back of Chiyal's brain as this Sklorno pinned him against the ground with her powerful legs. He quickly twisted to his hip and ankle-locked the thick alien limb. It should have been an easy escape, one he'd executed dozens of times in the octagon. A twist of the arms, the Sklorno would lose her balance, and he'd slip free. Except when he lost the mods that gave him speed, he also lost the mods that gave him strength. He strained with every sinew and muscle in his arms and torso, but it was no use. Chiyal no longer had the tech-enhanced power to overcome a larger alien opponent. The Sklorno watched him struggle with what might have been more curiosity than amusement or contempt. She lowered her long neck, angled her wavering eye stalks at a red-faced Chiyal. Every little boy and girl raised in the purest nation could recite, by heart, the nursery rhymes that instructed the faithful in how to deal death to the so-called satanic races. Unbidden, driven from somewhere in his deep memory, fueled by both the vicious kill-or-be-killed reptile brain and the unrelenting win-at-any-cost soul of a born warrior, a childlike choir sang. The crickets have eyes on the tops of their head. Grab them and pull them and soon they'll be dead. With Satan's soldiers, don't ever be kind. They can't see to sin if you make them blind. He reached up, snatched 2 of those snake-like appendages, and yanked them free of the Sklerno's body. Clear blood sprayed. The crushing weight immediately left his chest as the alien shrieked and awkwardly sprinted around the circle of dirt. Chiyal rolled from her frantic, agonized path as best he could, trying to regain his breath. Eventually, the Sklerno collapsed among the other bodies Chiyal had left in his destructive wake. He still clutched her eye stalks tightly in his hand, a hand that was shaking in a way it never had shaken before. That damned rhyme. In all his years in the Octagon, in spite of, or perhaps because of, that rhyme, Chiyal had never targeted a Sklerno opponent's eye stalks. Part of the reason was because in professional fights, Sklerno combatants armored this extremely vulnerable area of their physiology. They even modded them into weapons on occasion. That wasn't what had stayed Kai's hand, however. There was a difference between exploiting a weakness and preying on it. He'd never targeted eye stalks because he'd had honor. Apparently, like speed and strength, honor had fled him as well. His hand trembled. He tossed the disembodied eye stalks away in disgust. On shaking legs, Chiyal stood in the center of the pit, surrounded by the battered, broken forms of his opponents. No one cheered. He moved his gaze over the crowd. The fight he'd interrupted was now a no contest. Everyone holding betting chits on it was screwed. Everyone who tried to bet on Chiyal and had been denied was righteously pissed. He'd won. No cheers. No applause. No accolades. No championship belt. Only faces filled with anger, indifference, or, worse, pity and disgust. Pity for him. Chiyal suddenly couldn't remember the point he'd set out to prove when he'd stormed the pit. For the first time he could recall, victory didn't feel like victory. He felt weak. He could deny it no longer. Chiyal the Heretic North was a washed-up has-been. High side skittered down the pit slope, feet sliding on the dirt. "Look, Kari, I'll lay a 20 on you if you just get the hell out of the hole, all right?" The small man held out a single, dirty note. Chiyal stared down at it, his adrenaline leveling off, his emotions tearing at him from several different, disorienting directions. No one would hire him. He'd drunk away the last money he'd had to his name. He couldn't make any coin in the pit. No one would hire him. He was broke. Of course sentients were looking at him with pity. For the first time in his life, pity was all Chiyal North deserved. To take that money would be a high mark of shame. But he had to eat. He snatched the money from Highside's tiny hand, then stepped out of the pit. The crowd parted for him. He felt their stares on his back. That was The Reef, episode number 2. Kai's life has really bottomed out. And it's not even his life. It's the life of this person he's made up to evade Gredok the Splithead, who wants him dead. Gredok is one of the star characters in the Galactic Football League novel series. He is the owner of the INF Krakens franchise. If you're new to my stories, the Galactic Football League currently consists of 5 books: The Rookie, The Starter, The All-Pro, The MVP, and The Champion, and we are in pre-order for book 6, The Gangster. Hey, we have a brand new audiobook and ebook out, Kissy Man and the Gentleman. It is narrated by Ray Porter, who also narrated Earthcore. There are also rumors out there, just rumors, mind you, that Ray Porter is the character Darkseid in the Justice League of America movie, and that his scenes got cut. But there are rumors, mind you, that some of those scenes might be coming back in a director's cut. So it'd be pretty damn cool if the narrator of my novel Earthcore and my novel Kissing Man and the Gentleman is also Darkseid from the friggin' Justice League movie. That'd be amazing. Now, Kissing Man appeared in our podcast 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. It has been edited and re-recorded by Ray, who is a masterful performer. You can get this story, Kissing Man the Gentleman, for Kindle, for Nook, iBooks, and as a full-length audiobook on Audible and on iTunes. Find those links over at scottsigler.com/kissingman. Do you want to know what this two-fisted tale of Kissing Man is about? I will use movie voice to give you the synopsis. New York City, 1946. No one knows his real name, but when the job is too dirty, too dangerous, you call Kissing Man. Once, he was an elite Nazi SS commando, an honorable soldier, a taker of lives. When he was assigned to Dachau and saw what he was actually fighting for, he went AWOL and ran as far away as he could, to America. He still makes his living with a gun, but he no longer kills for his country. Now, he kills for cash. A dashing, high-profile bodyguard known as the Gentleman is hired to protect actress Beth Copenhaver, an up-and-coming Hollywood starlet. When a man named Mathis Wren surfaces from Beth's past and threatens her life, the Gentleman hires Kissing Man to make Mathis see the error of his ways. It should be a simple job, but there is far more to the connection between Wren and Beth than the bombshell lets on. She's starring in a new movie with John Wayne called Western Dawn. As the premiere approaches, Kissing Man has to get to Wren before Wren can get to Beth. That is the synopsis for Kissing Man and the Gentleman. As for the pre-order issues we had with GFL Book 6, The Gangster, at this point, we have shipped all products, books, and t-shirts ordered during the pre-order that are not The Gangster itself. You should have those already, or they are on their way to you in the mail. If you do not have yours, you can email info@emptyset.com. Give us a nice little hello and let us know you're still looking for that product. We have caught up on all of the emails at this point. It took a long time because of the server crash on the day of the pre-order sale. Getting through those technical issues took a little bit of work. If you haven't heard back from us regarding your issue, again, just email us, info@emptyset.com. We think we're all caught up, but if we're not, we want to connect with you and make sure that we are taking care of your issue and we make you happy. Now, don't email us asking us when The Gangster will be out because we don't have a release date for that GFL Book 6 just yet. If you haven't ordered your copy of The Gangster, get one! These are signed, numbered, limited edition hardcovers. And when they are gone for good. So the best way to get yours is to pre-order now at scottsigler.com/thegangster. Will Chiyal North be in the book? Who knows? I don't even know if he's going to survive through the Reef. You will have to tune in for the rest of our podcast and find out. For those diehards who are still listening, you're wondering, why are you moving all of the talky talk to the end of the episode? Well, for the first time, we started posting the podcasts on YouTube and on Facebook as a movie. So on Facebook, that's beneficial because you can actually play the episode. And then when you go do other things on Facebook or other things in your machine, the audio player will keep playing so you can get on about your business and goof around while you're listening to our entertaining story. YouTube, it goes right, we upload to Libsyn. When we publish, it gets published to YouTube as a movie. What we found is shocking. People don't want to hear me babble for like 5, 6, 7 minutes before they get to the story. We found our listenership on YouTube tuned out within the first 3 minutes, and I hadn't even got to the story yet. So this is a business, of course. So what we want to do is get on there, get the listener's attention. Want to deliver an ad, because this is an ad-supported podcast. That's part of why we're in business doing this. And then we want to get to the story as soon as possible. Try and hook people into the story, give them their entertainment. And then if they're intrigued by my personal story, my career path, all the things that are going on, the other books we have for sale, what projects are coming up, etc., Cool. Then they can listen after the episode and get all of the talky talk. So we're going to give this a try for the next 5, maybe 10 episodes of The Reef. We're going to see if it improves listenership, the amount of time people listen to an episode, see how it goes from there. I hope you guys are digging it. If you're listening at this point, you are true Blue Junkies, and we appreciate you. That is it for this week. We will be back next week with The Reef, episode number 3. And until then, I will talk to you all real soon. You have been listening to The Reef, a Galactic Football League novella. Written by Scott Sigler and Matt Wallace. Narrated by Scott Sigler. Audiobook directed by AB Kovacs and engineered by Steve Riekeberg. Copyright 2019 by Empty Set Entertainment. All rights reserved. Theme music is by the band Amps and Volts.